And welcome into the top early round picks for the Fantasy 4-Pack. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale and Frankie Santiago as we're breaking down just some of our favorite early round picks for the 2021 Fantasy Football Draft season. It's a yearly segment that we do where we will go through our favorite early, mid, and late round selections to give you guys an idea of just some players that we think are just all-around solid picks. Before we launch into it, as always, if you like the content we're bringing to you, if you're enjoying seeing our lovely faces or hearing our stunning voices, slap that subscribe button on YouTube, hit the notification bell, give us a follow on Twitter as well if you want to, catch the musings of our day-to-day life and other assorted fantasy football factoids and whatnot. And make sure to share us with your friends if you have friends who play fantasy football, or share us with your enemies if you think we're idiots and you want to give them bad information. For eyeballs are eyeballs. I believe it was Mr. Pulitzer who said that there is no such thing as bad press. So we will appreciate it whether you share us with your friends, enemies, dogs, pet rocks. You just kind of like leave us on in the barbershop, like ESPN First Take, whatever. We also have a little bit of news to get through today before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the segment. I'm going to lead off with the Dak Prescott news. I was a little worried about it. The more I read into it, I guess so. Dak Prescott is scheduled to undergo a second MRI on August 16th, which initially sounded very bad. Typically, you don't just go under the MRI because it's fun. That's not generally an elective procedure. But it sounds like he's been throwing for consecutive days, and the team is reporting that this MRI is just to check on his injury recovery. So, I guess it's no cause for concern. I mean, does this worry either of you guys at all?
Not really. It's more of I'll wait till I hear what comes out of said MRI.
Sure. So if he goes in and they're like, "Oh, you have no shoulder anymore."
Yeah. If they go in, and he says, "Yeah, you look great," then I don't really change much. I have a little more confidence in the offense. I know right now a lot of the Cowboys, basically all of their price tags have that. But if Dak is injured, like that's always the comment that comes up when you start to talk about why you might not want to draft them.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, as a Cowboys fan, I mean, less worried for fantasy, more worried for, actual football.
I don't know why you're worried for actual football. We already know the Cowboys are going to go 4-12 and miss the playoffs.
No, we're going to go
forever.
We're going to go 7-10 and somehow win the division.
No, you're going to go 4-12. You're just going to not play the last game. T.J. Hawkinson, undisclosed minor injury suffered in practice. Dan Campbell saying it's nothing to worry about. Nothing really major coming out of that. Until I hear otherwise, I'm still drafting T.J. Hawkinson as a high upside top 5 tight end. People get banged up in this time of year. As long as it's not something soft tissue related, I don't really care.
Yeah, this is when they're supposed to kind of get their bodies worked up for NFL speed, and so you expect a lot of, those like injuries that you get for players who kind of miss the preseason. That's the worry with them. Whereas these guys are getting it out in the camp and getting ready, so it's kind of stuff I expect. Definitely something to monitor, and especially with Dan Campbell being more of an old school kind of coach, where I can feel like he can be like, "Oh, I'll tough it out," but it's actually something a little bit worse.
Yeah, he's a rub some dirt on it kind of guy, and meanwhile Hawkinson's like, "I think I'm actually hurt. Like, it's just a broken arm. You can play through that, right?"
Yeah, just tape it together.
Good news for Justin Jefferson. Shoulder injury, suffered a couple days back to that AC joint, but he is doing individual drills and moving around at half speed. So sounds like he's trying to get right back into the swing of things and is moving along well. Yep. Less good news for a darling of yours, Vitale. Zach Moss injured his hamstring yesterday. Sean McDermott said they will take it one day at a time, but on the sliding scale of camp injuries, hamstring is like one of the worst that isn't immediately like before you're jumping to injuries that just make you miss time. Yeah. Like on the minor injury scale, hamstring's probably the worst one you could get.
Yep.
especially for a running back.
Yeah, it's high ankle sprains and hamstrings. Those are the two killers that can really hamper a whole season. So I hate to see it, but he's at least cheap enough. This might just push his price where he's even cheaper, but it's definitely a situation to monitor because I don't care how cheap he gets. If he's really dealing with a bad hamstring, then with his limited work already, he needed the good start to really break out and take that job. So if he's hampered and Devin Singletary capitalizes, I could see another just 50-50 split this year.
Adorable that you think Devin Singletary is capable of capitalizing even with a fully healthy body. Remember when Frankie loved Devin Singletary?
Listen, Buffalo's a passing attack now. We're not going to talk.
We're not
about
afraid. We're not afraid to slander on this show, Frankie.
We're not going to talk. Yeah, remember when you guys were sleeping on Aaron Jones?
We're not afraid.
Yeah.
We're not afraid to slander on this show. No, yeah, I'm. If Zach Moss is hampered going into the season, I'm just kind of out on the Buffalo rushing attack because Devin Singletary does he might as well just be an empty roster spot to me. Rashad Bateman, in one of the first actual, injuries of the season, Rashad Bateman has suffered a groin injury in practice. He is likely to miss a number of weeks while he recovers, which is terrible for a rookie. He was already a low percentage hit guy because of the Ravens' limited passing attack, and now you're adding on that he's a rookie who's not getting a preseason, and he might miss time in the regular season as well. I don't know about you guys, but I was already only looking at him as a late round flyer in the first place. I'm just full out on Rashad Bateman at this point. Maybe I'll pick him up in season if he pops, week 6 or something.
He, for me, was still off my board. He was at least someone I was keeping an eye on just to see because, he clearly had talent. There was something there that people, keyed in on.
Sure.
But like I said, as we touched on, they don't throw the ball enough to support another rookie. Mark Andrews eats the bulk there, and then what little else gets just kind of scattered around between the running backs and, whatever wide receiver he feels like targeting that week. So I am just full out on him. I'll let somebody else, take a stab even if he has a quick recovery.
Fair enough. Trending back towards good news here, Carson Wentz is trending towards a Week 1 return. His rehab on his foot injury sounds like it's going well, and they expect Wentz to be back in short order, which is, I think, there's massive news for that Colts team who is really relying on Wentz to be there and at least do what Phillip Rivers did last year.
Yeah. I think the big thing this helps, it bumps Jonathan Taylor a little bit, but I think mostly this is just helping all the passing weapons that we were hoping for in the later rounds. Pittman and all them.
Sure.
So
I mean, honestly, if Wentz is going to be back for Week 1, I see no reason why you don't keep Jonathan Taylor. Because, part of the reason we were all discounting Jonathan Taylor was because he lost a big chunk of his O-line and Carson Wentz. If he's getting Carson Wentz back, the O-line you can kind of patch up and he'll be healthy eventually again as well. I don't think that there's any reason to drop Jonathan Taylor out of the first round now if Wentz can be back for Week 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the one thing to look with this one is because ADP tends to be a cumulative process, and we've had a fair amount of mock drafting going on right now.
Yes.
Where we started with him higher up, and then he's just been steadily falling with the injury news to his line and to his quarterback.
Yes.
His ADP is probably not going to be very indicative of where his final draft position is going to be. So for people out there who are trying to be a little savvy, I honestly might just note down where Jonathan Taylor was when we started all this before these two injuries, so you can get an idea of about where people should feel on Jonathan Taylor. So if you're in one of those spots in the 6-7 range, you're looking at seriously taking him then and not trying to hope for him to fall in the second for you.
Oh yeah, no, there's no way he falls to the second. Not if his if his team is healthy around him.
I mean, even with I don't know, because I've been doing a lot of mock drafting because I'm at the back of the first round in our league. You guys know that.
Really, you've been doing a lot of mock drafting? Me too. We should mock draft together sometime.
We should. So, figure out what I'm going to snipe. Anyways, I think even with the questions that were there before, whether Wentz is going to be back, it was even hard for me, who's not really completely sold on him, to push him completely out of the first, because he is probably a top 5 running back as far as talent goes.
He's very talented. He's on a loaded offense, really good offensive line in front of him, smart head coach.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy for this news, just for the Colts in general. Hopefully Wentz doesn't break all of our hearts. Teddy Bridgewater will start the preseason in week 2, which sounds like it's the new dress rehearsal game for the NFL season. Now that they're down to 3 preseason games as opposed to 4. Drew Lock is getting the second stringer start in the first week. I mean, you guys are both on the same page as me, right? Where we're expecting Bridgewater to win the job here and kind of run Drew Lock out of town.
That's what I think is the most likely outcome. I think the Broncos are basically just saying... The Broncos. They're just giving
it's
him
the Broncos, eh?
They're just giving him a chance to play and see if he improved anything in the offseason, but I think this is Teddy's job to lose.
Yeah. Drew Lock can turn the ball over even faster now. He spent the entire offseason throwing to defensive backs.
He just had... Kid had such a good tape coming out of college. It just looked like he just needed a team around him. And
then they put a team around him, and he's like, you thought.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm glad that Teddy's there. This should at least be a watchable team this year. There's a lot of fantasy assets that just need a quarterback to make everything go forward.
Yep.
Back to Cowboys. Amari Cooper passed his physical and has been activated from the PUP list. So, we're right back to flipping that coin on which Cowboys receiver is going to be the one you want to roster this season, CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper. Sounds like they're both going to be healthy going into the preseason, which doesn't help us at all.
Yep.
With this news that Amari Cooper is, past physical, fully healthy, all that jazz, are you guys taking a stance on one side or the other?
I think it's less I'm taking a stance, more I am probably more interested in whoever's cheaper.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat there. I have been warming on Lamb a little bit since, our, bust episode. Where, again, I don't know. It's just hard between the two. And if you look back at last year, Lamb did have a great year.
Sure.
But Amari was pretty much the only guy on that team who didn't really have a not terrible season, but he was the guy whose volume and production wasn't really that affected, even though Dak went down.
Yeah, if my worry with the Cowboys receivers was that Cooper was going to be injured going into the preseason, and that Lamb was going to be able to cement himself a little bit in that offense while Cooper was on the sidelines. Maybe Cooper carries some of these injury issues into the season. If Cooper's going to be fully healthy going into the year, then I'm on team Amari Cooper. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it for me. I love CeeDee Lamb, but I think Amari has shown that he's Dak's favorite target. That he's one of the most capable receivers in the NFL. He's a very consistent producer. I don't think that there's really much question in my mind as to which one should go first if you're trying to grab a Cowboys receiver.
Sure.
And then Hunter Henry is likely to miss a couple of weeks with a shoulder injury. They're saying it's not super serious, but it's still, not great news for a guy who has struggled with injuries off and on. And you were hoping he was going to get some camp reps in to, really get cemented with this Patriots offense and sort of learn the ropes. I do give a bump to Jonnu. If Hunter Henry's been missing time, I think he was. You guys know I was already on Team Jonnu from the start. I think he's going to be the Patriots' target leader this season. But if Hunter Henry is going to be, missing time, that's just more work that can go towards Jonnu. They've even been reporting out of camp that he's been getting reps at the running back position or reps out of the backfield. Like Bill is just lining him up all over the field. Love it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that hurts for the team just overall is that it seemed like they really wanted to start running a lot of two tight end sets, and I believe Dalton Keene is also injured right now.
Yes.
So you're really reaching you got to really hope that Asiasi takes a step forward here and can fill in that second role, which he was drafted to be a starter here, so it's his chance to see if he can regain that role while Hunter's down. So
Sure. I mean, hey, look on the bright side too. We did go out and sign Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, so we've got some great wide receivers.
Those are wide receiver.
I like
Great
something.
wide receivers,
I
Frankie.
like
Those are-
Kendrick Bourne.
Great wide receivers.
Those are wide receivers.
Yeah, they're wide receivers that are further down the depth chart than Jacoby Myers, in my opinion. All right. Do you guys have any news that I didn't mention?
No.
Nope. I was trying to make a witty comment there, but didn't really think of anything.
I saw.
Moving on.
Anywho, moving into the meat and potatoes of this show here, we've got 6 players in the first 3 rounds. For those of you who didn't watch our episodes last year, the top early picks one deals with the first 3 rounds. The top middle picks will deal with rounds 4 to 6, and late picks is 7 and beyond. Just fun dart throws that we like. So this week we're talking to you guys about the elite of the elites. You'll excuse us if there isn't a lot of tearing down of each other's picks. These guys are top 3 round guys for a reason. There's not a lot of negatives that you can attribute to guys that are superstars or borderline superstars.
Yeah.
So we each have picked 2 guys that we really like in these rounds. Who wants to lead us off today? Frankie, you're first. You're first in the
everybody's
chart.
looked at me, so I'm just
I
gonna
was
start
about
us
to-
off here.
I was to jump in, but you went for it. So go ahead and take the floor.
All right. Well, it's no shock to you guys how much I love Travis Kelce as a person who is.
Yeah, you're our resident tight end homer.
Yeah. If you look at the last, 5 years since 2016, he's finished tight end 2 every single year.
Sure.
And considering he didn't get Mahomes until 2018, I mean, you can't really attribute all of his success to Mahomes. Obviously, that catapulted him up a little bit because, Mahomes is Mahomes. But, fast forward to 2020, career year, breaks a bunch of records, 105 receptions, 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns.
Yep.
It's all around just masterful performance. Finished, if you transition his points to the wide receiver position in half point, he finishes just behind Diggs and ahead of Ridley by I think 20 or 30 points, which puts him at the wide receiver 4.
Sure.
Now, it's kind of crazy to me that if you look at those points too, Tyreek Hill finishes the wide receiver 2, and we know the Chiefs pass a lot, but the fact that they were able to turn in both what would be the wide receiver 2 and 4 in a single season is kind of mind blowing to me.
Patrick Mahomes is good at football.
Now,
Not elite.
That's why I said
based on all the mock drafts I've been doing, I've been kind of playing around with different strategies, but the ones that I've been seeing a lot are double running back, sometimes even triple running back.
Sure.
And I like both of those strategies depending on where you're drafting. And I've been kind of experimenting myself, having a later pick with if I go a wide receiver or if I go Travis Kelce. And the way it's kind of turning out for me is, if you look at the positional advantage you're going to get from having Travis, say you just pick Travis Kelce in the first, you have the, maybe you have the 11 or 12 pick. If you just look at the way that your team kind of pans out, say you pick him with say you pair him with Austin Eckler or Jonathan Taylor before the news where he was kind of falling a little bit.
Sure.
It's kind of, I guess, let me just spit some numbers at you real quick. If you pair Travis Kelce, or if you just take his points from last year, if you look at the wide receiver position and tight end position, compare them to the running back position, the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver, or tight end 1, scored 65 points and 25 points above the running back 5. So, you're looking at guys you're going to get after that kind of wide receiver drop in the first.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get guys like Eckler, Taylor, Chubb. If you look at those and break them down even more, into their individual positions, the wide receiver 1 scored 70 more points than the wide receiver 5, and the tight end 1 scored 110, Travis Kelce obviously being the 1, more than the tight end 3. So if you factor in that the difference between the running back 8 and 12 was only 30 points, I mean, you break that down over 16 games, they're scoring, maybe 2 more points a game than the people in that same range.
Mm-hmm.
So if you compare Kelce again with the guy who is maybe not the Henrys and Cooks, but the Ecklers and Chubbs and Taylors.
Sure.
I mean, you can get it. I mean, the next guy I'm going to talk about is kind of going to bring this whole strategy together. But if you pair those two guys together with their a really solid floor wide receiver, that's a pretty nice core to your team right there. And Travis Kelce is probably, if not the safest floor, maybe at any position in football, based on what we've seen over the last 5 years. And I know I'm not necessarily saying go this strategy, but I don't think that anyone can really hold it against. I mean, if you compare it to Lamar Jackson when people were taking him in the second, third because of his rushing upside, it's kind of the same thing. It's you have a guy who just has a really safe floor based on the kind of player that they are, and the main concern here is, he's 32 years old. I think it's September. I forget what his birthday is, but I think sometime during the season he turns 32. Age is going to come. He's going to fall off. But we haven't really seen a decline on the football field to show that that's going to happen. And he also still has, I think the best quarterback in the league throwing on the football right now.
Fair. Yeah. He definitely has the merit. He has that positional advantage that you're going to get with just the ridiculous scoring you get from him. I really can't fault anyone for taking him there, especially when if guys like Devontae are off the board and none of the true elite running backs are there. As most of the time when you're taking Kelce, they're not there. It gives you an elite position that you then don't have to go bargain bin hunting and waiver wire hunting later. So it could free up a bench spot if you have a short bench league or you're in a deeper league. Then you can just completely focus on going running back, wide receiver, like you said, or going double running back, because I think there's second, third round you could go out and get yourself an Eckler and a David Montgomery and have a nice safe floor running back, and then still get all the wealth of wide receivers that are in those middle rounds that we all seem to like this year.
You're getting Julio in the 4th right now.
Exactly.
So you know my feelings on Julio in the 4th. That offense, I don't truly believe that offense throws enough to support 2 wide receivers, and Julio has been a volume guy his entire career. I'm actually kind of down on him in that range. I'd like to see him fall further so that you can actually have some upside instead of drafting him at a ceiling. But we're not talking about Julio right now. Yeah. I think the biggest reason that you'd take a tight end in this range, and the biggest reason you didn't mention, and not a tight end, I guess, but Travis Kelce in this range, is the bust rate of first-round picks. Over the past decade or so, first-round picks, and a lot of this is due to injury, at least for running backs. Wide receivers are just fluky. But be it injury or fluke, the bust rate for first-round or top 15 picks, for the most part, has been hovering right around 50%. Bust in this case being finishing 6 or more spots below your preseason ADP. This information was coming from 4for4. They did an article on it last year. I didn't see an updated one this year, but the data remained pretty consistent over the course of the better part of a decade. I can't imagine that 2020 changed it a ton. I think the biggest thing that Travis Kelce offers you, if you want to go this route, that you can't guarantee if you go a different ways, Travis Kelce is almost always on the field. And when he's on the field, he's producing. He's producing at a very high level, consistently, week in, week out. Does it feel kind of sketchy to go tight end first? Yes. But there is something to be said for guaranteeing yourself points, I think.
Yeah. Like I said, I agree with that. For me, the reason I end up going away from Kelsey is I just really, really want to hit on running back and give my team that depth. So I usually end up passing on him and just taking guys like Chubb, Taylor, Aaron Jones, and then pairing them with those other running backs that we said we liked in the second, third round.
Sure.
Just to really make sure that when and if I do miss on one of those first 15 picks, I've got other ones. But,
sure. I mean, I think the big takeaway here, for at least for me, is that you can't you have to choose if you're going to go early, whether you're going wide receiver or tight end early. I don't think, especially this year, I don't think you can afford to go early tight end and early wide receiver, because that just puts you way behind the 8 ball on running back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't hate the Travis Kelce pick.
Yeah, especially, I mean, not to circle talk, but especially with those later picks too, you definitely can't, because then you're waiting 23 picks between your next pick if you go both wide receiver and tight end.
So I'm going to talk about a guy here for my first player who you actually mentioned in your take, Frankie. And a big reason that I like Calvin Ridley a lot this season as, one of my favorite early round picks is honestly kind of for some of the same reasons that you are a big Travis Kelce fan. Calvin Ridley was ridiculously consistent last season for a wide receiver. He was just being peppered with targets, and part of that was Julio not being there. Well, I have good news for you. Julio's still not there. That offense hasn't changed. Yes, they have a new offensive coordinator in town, but that offense hasn't changed that much. Matty Ice is still there, and he's still performing at a decently high level. Calvin Ridley last season finishes the wide receiver 4. He 90 catches, 1,374 yards, 9 touchdowns, and all that on 143 targets. Like he was a just absolute workhorse wide receiver for you last season. And honestly, he has room to improve now that Julio's gone. And a big reason why I like Calvin Ridley more than some of the guys going before him, more than Tyreek Hill or Stephon Diggs or DeAndre Hopkins, or even kind of more than Devontae Adams, is I don't have to invest a first or high second pick in Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's ADP right now is hovering right around 20. He's going in the back half of the second round. There are going to be leagues where he falls into the third. There is a scenario where you have a top 3 pick and you come out of the first 3 rounds with your team looking like Christian McCaffrey, Calvin Ridley, and J.K. Dobbins. Like, I think the ability to grab Calvin Ridley at such a depressed price is insanely valuable, especially given just how talented. I mean, he is probably would you guys agree he's probably one of 5 receivers in the NFL who has a clear path to being the number 1 overall receiver in the game?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've always liked Ridley. I mean, and that was before what he did last year.
Yeah. I think he's literally I think it's literally him and the guys that you were mentioning above him, the only ones I can see even taking the 1.
Sure. I mean, I could see a route for someone like A.J. Brown or D.K. Metcalf sneaking in there if they have some like ridiculous outlier touchdown season. But that's the thing with Calvin Ridley. He doesn't need a ridiculous outlier touchdown season. He needs what he did last year, and he catches 3 more touchdowns. Like and honestly, there's no reason he can't get up to like an Allen Robinson type target volume. If he catches a few more of those, we could be looking at him being, well over 100 catches, over 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I mean, that's not a fantasy. That is very much in the realm of possibility for Calvin Ridley this season. He is. I honestly just as good as Julio Jones was, because Julio Jones was a monster for his entire career. We've yet to see if Calvin Ridley can replicate that, but he at least looks like he has the potential to be, the next great receiver in Atlanta, following Julio Jones and Roddy White, and Tony Gonzalez and all these other great pass catchers that have come through that town. And you're getting him even later than you typically would have been able to get. You typically would be able to get a Julio Jones back when he was in his prime on that team. I mean, Julio was a guy who always went high second round, sometimes even the first round. All of a sudden, we change the name up a little bit and make him just younger, but still just as talented, and he gets a half a round or a full round discount. Like I am very interested in this guy, especially if I have a high pick in the first round, because he's gonna be one of those guys that's just hanging out on the board when your pick order comes back around, and that's just it's hard to pass up upside like that, in my opinion.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially with the way we've been seeing running back going so high. I mean, guys like that are going to slip. Like, it's crazy to me that you can get him in the third round, and he is the wide receiver 4 right now on boards. It's
I mean,
insane.
Last season, he was going in the back of the third, beginning of the fourth, and after posting a wide receiver 4 season, having Julio Jones leave town, he went up like maybe a round. Like, that's wild.
Yeah, he definitely has an amazing path to provide great value to your team.
Yeah.
Because you can get him so late, and because people are gonna, as they see running backs flying off the board, people's instinct of wanting to go double running back is gonna overtake them, and they're like, I know that Chris Carson normally goes deep in the third, but I don't see myself getting him if I wait, and the guy in the 3 hole takes Chris Carson and keeps pushing these receivers back.
Sure.
So,
no, I mean, like I said, I love it. I love that there's not a lot of competition for targets in Atlanta either. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that even comes close to Calvin Ridley's level of talent. I think my only worry about him is that Matt Ryan is getting older, and he's never been like an elite quarterback. He's always just been kind of the what if range, the tier 2 or tier 3, and eventually Matt Ryan has to start declining.
yeah.
I don't think it's going to be this season, but I think that's the worry there. If you are trying to nitpick and find a flaw for Calvin Ridley, is new offense in Atlanta. Can Matt Ryan keep doing Matt Ryan things?
Yeah.
All right, Vitali, take us away with another. Wow, we're talking a lot of pass catchers today. This is weird.
It's funny.
We are a running back show, guys.
I mean, we want to highlight some other players to help push them up the
We
boards.
are a running back show.
Well, not for right now, we're not. So the guy I'm going to talk about, a lot of the same points as yours. Consistency, high production level, going in the middle to late half of the second.
He's going like a pick or two ahead of Calvin Ridley.
You said he was ADP 20. DeAndre Hopkins is ADP 18.
Yep.
So you're getting almost the same value for Calvin, who I can see, if you want to make an argument for either of the guys, I can see it. Personally, I go Hopkins because we've seen him do it for year in, year out, and he is one of the few receivers in the league that is what I would consider QB proof.
I don't know what you're talking about. Ryan Mallett's a great quarterback.
Yeah, Matt Schaub was great too.
Schaub actually had some good. Don't slander Schaub. He had some good
slander
seasons.
Schaub because, like I said, we don't even see it with guys like Antonio Brown. When Big Ben was going down, he dropped like a stone. Devontae Adams still held it on a little bit that 2017 season when Rodgers got hurt, but he became inconsistent. Hopkins has just been amazing for years, and he, like Calvin Ridley, is heavily targeted in his offense. That was the one thing we were worried about for DeAndre going into the Cardinals was, do they spread the ball out too much? Do they run too much? Does the quarterback use his legs a little too much to get him the target volume he needs? He got all the targets, 160 targets from Kyler, and if Kyler didn't get hurt, it was a week 11. Who knows how high DeAndre could have gotten? And on top of that, the only thing that was really keeping him from taking the number 1 spot, or at least taking the number 2 spot, was touchdowns. He only got 6, and league average for a guy getting his amount of yardage is usually the 8-9 range. So if you just push him up there, he's easily threatening there and probably going in the top of the second this year. So I see, when I look at Calvin Ridley and him, the reason why I went with DeAndre is better offense that is going to keep them on the field more. You don't have to worry about the risk of regression, I don't believe, because we believe Kyler should be taking steps forward. That's why he's going as the 3rd quarterback off the board right now, 3rd, 4th. And he is just a model of consistency, as we talked about with Kelsey. In 8 seasons, he's missed 2 games. So you're getting a guy who's going to be out there week in, week out for your squad. If you miss out on the running backs and you have to pivot like we were talking about in our strategy video, this is not a bad guy to pivot to if you're someone who's picking in the middle. And let's say you got Derrick Henry, and you're like, man, I'd really like to get Joe Mixon to pair with him, even though I'm not a fan of him. Joe Mixon goes a couple picks before you, and you're looking at either reaching into the 3rd round for a running back, which you could just wait on, or grabbing a wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is a great example for your team to just go out there and lock up and anchor.
Sure. I mean, honestly, I think the injury point is a really good one, because I've built my fantasy career around being risk averse when it comes to injuries. You can't. Little known fact, but you can't actually score fantasy points if you aren't on the field. So I do love his health, because that's how you get targets. You stay healthy, you get in the field, you produce.
Yep.
The big reason that I don't like him as much as guys like Calvin Ridley or Stephon Diggs is actually the touchdown total.
Yeah.
Typically, touchdowns aren't a sticky stat, but the Cardinals are a little bit of a weird team in how they score touchdowns. Kyler never really improved as much as we thought he was going to in his second year. Honestly, he improved more on the ground than through the air. He only had 26 touchdowns last year as opposed to 20 in his rookie year. So DeAndre Hopkins was still getting almost or a little over a fifth of his team's touchdowns, which is a very high watermark for, when you compare total touchdowns thrown to how many a wide receiver has. I personally believe that Kyler Murray will take another step forward, but the nitpicker in me, or if you're out there trying to find reasons for why you are worried that he can't claim that one spot, is that Kyler might just run too much to ever really get him the touchdown volume.
Yeah, that's really the only thing I was going to say is
because if Kyler runs it in, he can't also throw it in.
Right. Yeah, I'd say that's the one thing where you go Ridley over Hopkins is if you're shooting for the upside, because we know that easily Ridley can get the double-digit touchdowns. If Hopkins, I think what we're seeing last year, that's basically Hopkins' floor, maybe a little bit worse. So I think his bust potential is very, very low for Hopkins, where if some things go right and Kyler does take that step forward, and even to 32, 34 touchdowns, which is more bog standard for other quarterbacks, and he still maintains that touchdown share,
yeah,
he could be huge.
Yeah, I think we have to see Kyler go over 33 touchdowns to really have DeAndre Hopkins have true number one potential, or DeAndre Hopkins has to just be a yardage monster. He has to threaten 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
If either of those things happens, sure. But I don't know. I either like the guys. I either find myself liking the guys in front of him or the guys after him a little more than him, honestly.
Fair.
Frankie, what about your second guy? Who are you looking at here?
Well, I talked about. We've talked a lot today about guys who are just kind of safe or just consistent.
Yes.
One of
the dictionary definition of safe wide receiver.
Mr. You know what? We're gonna call him AR-151 because this is it's insane. There has to be something in his contract where he gets 151 targets.
Oh no, it's insane. He always ends up right around that mark.
Well, actually, in 2015, 2016, 2020, he hit exactly 151.
Yep.
They missed by a little bit in 2019, but that's because he got more.
Yeah, he got 152 that year, didn't he?
154.
What a bum.
Yeah, how dare he get 3 more targets?
If you just look at those years where he's played full seasons, he obviously had the injury in I think 2017. Last year in Jacksonville.
Yep.
And he missed a couple games in 2018, but he finished the wide receiver 6. 2016 the yardage just kind of wasn't there. Finished the wide receiver 25, and then 11 and 12 and 19 and 20. It's just insane to me that despite being, we'll call him injury prone, he missed the season. Then he
is absolutely not injury prone, Frankie. He had a freak injury that cost him a season. Outside of his one season that he had no way of avoiding, he's basically always on the field.
Besides, the yardage not being there, the fact that he's been able to just hold that volume at 151 consistently over between those 6 years now, and
just always having trash quarterback play.
Not that he has the ceiling of DeAndre Hopkins, but it's kind of like he is almost a little bit quarterback proof, where if you just look at the fantasy points he puts up per game, he has a really safe floor. Just looking back last year, he had I think 3 single. If you look at half point, 3 single digit games.
Yeah, not counting the year where he tore his ACL. He has missed 3 games.
It's no 2.
I know, it's terrible, but. Yeah, he is another guy who he is just always on the field for you.
Yeah, he is basically, the reason I feel like everyone passes up on him, he is the ultimate floor play. There's not much sex appeal there. But I would argue if there was ever going to be sex appeal to his name, it's this year, especially with all the stuff I'm seeing coming out of camp.
I mean,
about
Andy
Justin
Dalton's
Fields.
probably the best quarterback he's ever had.
Yeah, and Justin Fields is looking pretty solid as well. so
Anthony
it's like,
Miller's gone.
Oh, I mean, I don't care that
Yeah.
guys are gone.
guys.
Well,
can-
I mean, that's vacated.
yeah, I
time.
was gonna say it's like
He's going to get more.
No.
he doesn't get more.
He's going to get more.
The only way I'd be even talking about his targets is if they're like, oh, we signed Julio Jones. I'm like, he might go down a little bit.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a guy that you can get in the back of the third round where it's like, I mean, he's not going to boom like Devontae or DeAndre, but if you go running back, whatever you choose, maybe you,
I mean, if you're marking his ADP correctly, Frankie, he's a beginning of the fourth guy. 39 is the fourth round.
yeah, it's
You're breaking the rules of the show, Frankie, just so you can sneak Allen Robinson
Hey,
in.
hey.
My favorite third round guy.
What-
he goes
what-
in the fourth
what-
almost all the time.
what did we say last
No,
week?
I am showing that his current ADP on Fantasy Pros is 34.3.
What did
So
we-
so he is
36 is the end of the third.
he is clipping the end of the third
Right.
round.
So-
but like that is just dumb cheap for a guy that you know exactly what he's going to give you.
Yep.
Like there is no question mark there. It's as long as he's healthy, you're getting a wide receiver 10 season out of him.
Yeah, and just because of the fact that he is not a sexy name yet, and
Not yet. Never will be.
I,
name is Allen
like I said,
If he
Justin
isn't a
Fields-
household name at this point, that ship has sailed, and the common man just does not care about Allen Robinson.
Like I said, the common man will care if Justin Fields comes out and is the first good Bears quarterback in like
Ever?
a millennia.
I don't think it matters. I think he's going to turn in.
So that I'm just saying, it just could, it could
1,151.
right. But he could up those totals and maybe make him a more efficient catcher, increase the yardage, increase the touchdowns, and then he becomes a household name. But for right now, the fact that if you're going triple running back and you have a pick in the back of the third and you wrap around to the fourth and you can get this guy as your first receiver, nuts, absolutely crazy. That you can just be like, oh yeah, I'll get a guy who gets elite target share of his team and just produces at a consistent level, so he's never going to hurt me.
Yeah, I mean he is what we talk about when we talk about drafting for safety, so that you can take risks later. If you have a guy like Allen Robinson as your wide receiver 1, you're never gonna be like, yay, Allen Robinson, woo, because like he's never gonna go out there and win you a week. But he's also never gonna lose you a week. He's gonna log in and just score you 15 points and go home. And like that kind of production allows you to take shots at guys like Mike Williams.
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to what I was saying in my first, thing about Kelsey. You go Kelsey, you go running back, second round, running back, third round, and then Allen Robinson's sitting there at the, start of the fourth. I mean,
I mean, if you're going Kelsey and then a running back, like you're probably not getting Allen Robinson in that case. But
No, if you're going to the back of the first,
the likelihood is that somebody is taking him in that range.
I mean, you'd be drafting at the top of the top of the fourth round, right about where he's going. So he only needs to slip a little bit for you to get him. So it's not the wrong.
And-
I guess it depends on how late you are in the first.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, those two alone, Kelsey and Robinson, make for a very safe floor, just in general.
Sure, I mean you got to watch out for playing too much to the floor at that point, but it's not a bad call at all. Is that I really like Allen Robinson, especially because he just lacks ceiling. You always get him at a depressed price compared to what he does.
Yeah, I mean, he's never been a touchdown guy either. I mean,
Aside from 2015 where he
Yeah.
scored 14.
yeah, it's like 6, 7, 8 a year. If he suddenly becomes a touchdown guy, which I don't think he has.
No, like he does not have I will confidently say he does not have wide receiver 1 upside. That being like the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have top 3 upside. He has like maybe top 7. The upside to him is that you aren't going to get like worse than 12.
Yeah, pretty
Like
much.
he's just going to show up and he is going to guarantee you that he is going to be a wide receiver 1. And there are a lot of other guys in football, especially not the range that he's going, that you can just take knowing that they are going to finish the season relatively close to their draft position.
Yeah.
All right, my second guy here is a guy that I've already talked about a little bit on our values episode. He's also going very late in the. He's actually come up a little bit since I last talked about him. But David Montgomery is still being criminally underrated by fantasy managers, and I have very little time left to convince everyone that he is a stud and deserves to be drafted as such. Since I talked about him in the value episode, he's come up from running back 20 to running back 16, and his ADP has gone from 38 to 31. So, good on you, fantasy managers. He's rising a little bit, but like this man is still a crazy value for what you're getting from him. I mean, David Montgomery is. We just talked about Allen Robinson and how the Bears should be an improved team this season. David Montgomery had a breakout year last year. Like, period. End of sentence. He showed up in a big way for fantasy managers last year. It finished as the running back 4, with some absolute stud names at the position. The running back room has gotten worse there. It just actively has gotten worse. The quarterback play has improved. Mitch Trubisky doesn't even know that he wasn't cut. I don't know if you guys caught, but there was a story from Bill's camp where McDermott was going through giving a speech. He's like, "Sit down if you were cut or traded," and Mitch Trubisky sat down, not realizing the team just didn't re-sign him. Like that's the level of dumb this team had at their quarter. Just a big dumb golden retriever playing quarterback for them. Like this is a Bears team that has a lot of promise in my opinion at least. I really like Justin Fields. I don't love Andy Dalton, but he's better than what they had, and he should be at least a good stopgap until Fields is ready to go. The offensive line should be better than last year. Allen Robinson is still there and healthy. Dave Montgomery is another year more cemented into this league. And I think one of the biggest reasons that I am all chips in on David Montgomery is the fact that he is one of the few running backs in the league that I think presents legitimate 300 carry upside. You don't find guys like that just lying on the street anymore. The amount of 300 carry running backs has decreased dramatically over the past decade.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that kind of volume, especially not in a year where we're kind of running back starved. We were talking about it pre-show where it's like the first 20 running backs are good, and then after you hit 20, it's just a plummet. You're going down to rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like to be able to get a guy that has the carry upside of like a Dalvin Cook or a Zeke, maybe not the talent of those guys, but at least like a similar carry ceiling as those two. But be able to get him 2 full rounds later, like he is one of my favorite running backs to try and pair with the players that I pull out of the first 2 rounds, just because of the sheer amount of volume upside he brings. He brings the same amount of volume upside as someone like Joe Mixon or Najee Harris, but he's on a better team than both of them. I know. I just don't get it. Like he has shown us already that he can do it. Matt Nagy has come out and said multiple times that he sees him being a 300 carry back or a 20 carry a game back. Like we've seen him be a fantasy superstar, on a short-term basis at the end of last season, where he was just coming in and absolutely blowing people out, and people are still doubting him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's more evidence now this year than any year. But like I said, last year I was talking about him. He was my favorite value pick. Basically, nothing's changed. Just he now has two better quarterbacks. And we have, reports from camp. They're trying to work him into the passing game, which I think that's just a typical thing you hear with every running back that's not very pass savvy.
Well, no, but that's a good point, because I'm just talking about his carry upside. Like imagine if he has, because he clearly has the carry upside. Imagine if he gets 300 carries and 50 targets. I mean, he could that's like top 5 running back stats.
Which it is. Like I said, I think his receiving should see an uptick, but we've heard it before with other running backs where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're trying to get him involved."
I know it's
Jordan Howard's of late.
It's a pie in the sky type.
The coach, the coach wants to talk up their versatility, so they can't just scheme like, "Oh, he's in, stack the box," plan for the run kind of thing. But
it's definitely a pie in the sky type mentality. But like, I don't think you have to count on receiving volume for David Montgomery to make him a viable fantasy running back.
Yeah,
especially where he's going.
All I'm going to say is based on the last 2 takes, I've convinced myself, and you've convinced me, that the Bears are going to be the most consistent team in fantasy football.
I mean, realistically, there could be multiple high-end fantasy options on that Bears team. We could be. I mean, Jimmy Graham is still a productive fantasy tight end. We could have a productive fantasy player at every position from the Bears this season, including defense, because the Bears' defense is also pretty good.
Yeah.
Which is honestly another point in David Montgomery's category, because as we know, a strong defense plays well into a good running game, because it means the running backs on the field more being used to help grind down the clock while the while the Bears are trying to just stop the other team from getting to score points. I really like him this season, especially where he's going. Honestly, he's a great guy if you're trying to do your strategy where you go, tight end in the first round and you just start picking up running backs. He's a guy that you can target at the same time or later than Chris Carson, but almost like 100 carries more than Carson.
Yeah.
All right, Vitaly, what about you? Who's your next fella you want to talk about?
Well, we've done enough bargain talking. Time to go into the first round and talk about a guy that I think is one of the few running backs outside of the top 4 guys that actually has what I would consider just a good chance of being the RB1, and that's Mr. Ezekiel Elliott. You actually were just referring to him about how he's one of the few guys left that gets that 300 carry workload,
or at least has the chance to get it.
Right. So the only time he missed it, so it was last year, which we know how bad the Cowboys were last year, and the season that he was suspended. So when he plays a full slate with the full offense ready to go, without his line decimated, without his quarterback missing, he gets 300 carries. He also gets on top of that, usually in the ballpark of, it's been 70 the last 2 years consistently, 71 both years, then 95 in 2018 for targets. So he is used very heavily in both facets of the game. Him and Dak Prescott were drafted in the same year and apparently are great buddies. So I can see him coming back now that the Cowboys have done right by Dak, and the team seems to be on the right foot here and making an actual push of being an elite team in the league, at least offensively. I can see the Zeke of old coming back to the 300 carries, 14 to 1,500 yards, getting his yards per game or yards per attempt up into the 4.5 range. I mean, he still hasn't fallen under 4, even with how bad they were last year. He still maintained a 4. He's just like one of those guys that has just amazingly elite talent, has been usually a guy who's a perennial top 3 pick.
Sure.
And right now you can get him depressed at his ADP right now.
You can get him depressed.
You can get him so depressed.
I don't want him sad.
Well, last year he was a little too happy when he was down running on beaches, working out a lot for the season. But, he got COVID.
Lots of 12-ounce curls.
Yeah. He came in. He wasn't in shape. He caught COVID. He was dealing with all that stuff. So I think we're going to see Zeke eat again. I think that meme's going to come right on back. And you're looking at a guy that you can get, I've seen him go as high as 5 usually, maybe 4, all the way down to like 8.
Yeah. So it's a wide range of outcomes for a guy who has been threatening to be the best overall back in football on a multiple year basis.
Yeah, he is the CM, before it was CMC and Dalvin, it was him and Gurley. He was that caliber of talent, and people are just scared because they don't know what they're going to get from the Dallas offense this year, and they don't know what kind of Zeke is. And Tony Pollard scared everyone. But
no, I mean, he was taken 4th overall for a reason.
Yeah,
you don't draft a running back at that level
and pay him that much,
and pay him that kind of money, unless you are really confident in his abilities. And we've seen, a la Adrian Peterson, who's still kicking around the league. We've seen running backs with those. I will use this. I hate this term. I will use it for Zeke. Those generational talent running backs. We've seen them last longer than the typical age 27 and you're dead running back. That seems to have become common. While I am concerned based on Zeke's downturn last season and the amount of mileage on his legs, I am very much in at his price.
Yeah, like you're saying, he's still 26, so ideally he has this year.
Yeah, he's not that old.
Yeah, he has this year and next year. Granted, he has a lot of work that he's had through the years, but that just shows you that the Cowboys want to use him heavily.
Sure.
Even when they were having a bad season, he still got almost 250 carries.
Yeah, he is a centerpiece of their offense.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the big selling points for him is that there are a lot of these later round running backs, or not later round, but like later in the first round running backs. Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, even Jonathan Taylor. You can't really claim that they're, or Joe Mixon. You can't really claim that these guys are centerpieces to their team. They're nice additions. They may get a lot of work, but a lot of them are more, just a very good piece for their team, whereas the Cowboys are very much built around Zeke.
Yeah, they're more like a Derrick Henry and the Titans, less than a
Aaron
Jones, like where we know Aaron Rodgers and Devontae are the that's the core of the team.
I would say, I would still argue that Zeke is more of a centerpiece than Kamara is.
I could see that argument.
Well, I don't know about now.
I mean, he still got a ton of work last year. The Cowboys paid him out the nose.
Oh, I'm more meant because.
Yeah, but Kamara's situation is a situation forced because they have no receivers, no quarterback, and someone has to catch the football. Whereas like the Cowboys have a embarrassment of riches as far as weapons go, and they are still forcing the ball to Zeke.
Yeah, he got 310 opportunities last year.
Yeah, we're no stranger how I feel about Zeke. I think he's my probably second favorite running back as far as just talent goes. And I mean, we talked about before CMC and Dalvin, he was the guy. He's still kind of the guy even with the down year.
Yeah, I think it's kind of dumb that I can understand him falling to 4 because I think there are 3 guys that you can make a very solid case for taking ahead of him. I think it's dumb that you could potentially get him behind guys like Aaron Jones or an injured Saquon Barkley. Like that's just taking the hate too far.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just one of those things where, especially with how late you can get him, that's why I decided to go with him, is because you can take him, and then almost all the guys that we just talked about, you can pair Zeke with DeAndre, Zeke with Calvin Ridley, Zeke with Eckler, Chubb, or probably not Chubb, but
no, Chubb's the first round guy right now.
Yeah, but like Zeke is going.
You'd have to trade up in the first to get Chubb.
Yeah, Zeke can go in tandem where it's like, yes. Even if he comes back to prominence, I think CMC still is the RB1 until someone takes it from him.
Sure, I mean, like a very real team you could end up with through 3 rounds is like Zeke, Calvin Ridley, David Montgomery, and all of a sudden you're in a great spot going into the middle rounds of the draft.
Yeah, your 2 RBs getting 600 carries combined, like it's gonna be tough to beat.
There are teams that don't get that with 3 running backs.
Yeah.
All right, well that'll do it for us today as we talked about our favorite top round players. Join us in the coming weeks as we will go over our middle and late rounds as well as our players that are getting our stamps of approval this season. I won the golden stamp last year, so we'll see if either of you guys can dethrone me or if I'm going to make this a multi-year crown.
You're a nerd.
The hate is palpable. I get it.
You're a nerd.
You say nerd, I say most accurate person on the podcast. It's tough being as good as I am. But that's neither here nor there. Like I said, join us next week as we will be diving back into the deeper rounds of the draft as well as dropping off another mock draft for you guys. And as always, if you have any questions, issues, concerns, hit us up on Twitter or leave a comment in the video. We love to hear from you. Adios.